Amazing. We're all pulling a Tyler. We're doing it. Feels great. Welcome to PMS Philosophical Musing Sessions, which is a monthly series dedicated to big feelings and big questions. My name is Ilana Gilovich Stossel, and this is our 5th event of PMS at Dead Letter number 9. Woo! So many of the hallmarks of our previous PMS events will remain constant for tonight. So for instance, we are going to have 2 remarkable guests up here with me to talk about the meaning of life and the beauty of art. We have a new plant co-host, as we do each month for those of you who are here for the first time, and I will introduce her in just a moment. And finally, we have this book, which accompanies me to every PMS session, so that when the event concludes, anyone who wishes can come up here and write down their answer to the question, where do you find meaning? Or where do you find purpose? Where do you find beauty? And you are allowed to write in it as many times as you want, across as many months as you want, because as the menstrual cycle attests, we are always changing month to month. I like to begin these sessions by reading one of our previous entries. So I will read something that someone wrote in June. I've discovered through doing this that I'm really bad at reading people's handwriting. So if I misquote you for any reason, apologies in advance. The divine within makes itself known in the stillness, in solitude, in nature, or in the eyes of a stranger. Every day that luminous self within gives a cry of love, and hopefully we are quiet enough to hear it. So whoever that goddamn poet was, it's anonymous, but it's really beautiful. So again, to recap, our central pillars remain the same: plant co-host, human guests, and our crowdsourced book of wisdom. However, one central tenet of PMS barbarously does not apply tonight, which is that typically I try to intentionally schedule these sessions in the frenetic few days leading up to my period, so that I can grace all of you with the most unhinged parts of my personality, and you graciously receive that. And I usually do this because I want to honor the messy, the crazy, and the deeply felt. I feel that so much of our current cultural ecosystem severs us from our deep wells of feeling, from all that is galloping and untamed within us. And so PMS sort of arose as a counter to those kinds of feelings, so that we might unearth and celebrate all those wild and wayward parts. However, tonight is an exception to this plan, because we at PMS, Nina, our videographer, Sarah, our producer, and I really wanted to prioritize what we might conceive of as October's luteal phase, which is these dark days coming right out of a dark new moon as we all kind of tiptoe towards the holiday known as Samhain or Halloween. And so because of that, I specifically, now we're doing TMI, we may as well, am on the final days of my follicular phase, which is a very different part for those of you unfamiliar with a woman's menstrual cycle. This is where a woman is generally more fertile, more energetic, more optimistic. This is actually when I should be doing these talks, but I'm into the luteal phase. So you are welcome. You've been spared for one night only from my fangs, from the hurricane that is my luteal phase. You are welcome. And although this departure, I think, is a less visceral or embodied worshiping or honoring of the luteal phase and all of her unruly gifts, I think it nevertheless is thematically of a piece of what I and we are endeavoring to do here with PMS, which is to kind of create an anthem around what we find beautiful and meaningful. So we will still have that wild undercurrent of the luteal phase, but tonight it is sprinkled with a little bit of the possibility of the follicular phase. And you will note that our next PMS session is November 5th in just 2 weeks, and we will be back on track. A moody bitch again. So really look forward to that. I'll see you in 2 weeks. And I gather people here each month. I'm so grateful that all of you are here, so that we can talk about where we find beauty and where we find meaning. And the reason is, I believe that what we love, not what we're obsessed with, not with what we're preoccupied by or addicted to, but what we truly love is good for the world. And we need to be underlining those passages in our hearts as fervently as we possibly can. Right now, our species seems to be skidding into, if not an actual apocalypse, then certainly a socio-political sphere in which what is real and what is radiant seems to matter less than what is profitable and what is bombastic. And I don't think it's too late. This is my hot take. I think we still have time to do something about it. Our future can sound like a cacophonous cry of war. Our future can sound like robots talking to each other. Or our future could sound like the most tender melody we've ever played together as a species, as all of the unborn poems within us grow crisp and magnified in the face of our imminent doom. So that is what I believe. And I do think that in my personal belief, life is our scheduled appointment with love. It's now, it's happening. And if that is the case, how are we showing up to it? Do our systems and civilizations mirror all that is extraordinary and rapturous and complicated about ourselves and our world? I do not believe that we are going to be able to kind of pound down the door to our own salvation. I think you have to pick that lock with love and with art. And so this series is an investment in human passion. It's an opportunity to kind of drizzle the heart in honey and see how capacious and wise the human soul can be. So with PMS, we start by honoring the natural world with our plant co-host, and then introducing our two wonderful artists, thinkers, and dreamers so that we can get insight from them about the meaning of life. And I do want to give a personal shout out to Chelsea Bonoski, who was our initial guest. Unfortunately, she had a family emergency, so please hold her in your hearts tonight. And the very noble Max Stossel, my fiance, and wonderful artist in his own right. I swear this is not nepotism. Part of the reason I fell in love with him was because of how he was and us as an artist. So he was going to be a guest anyway. We just scooched it on up. So thank you to Max, and we are all collectively loving on Chelsea right now. So without further ado, I would love to introduce our co-host, the White Rose. There are over 300 different species of roses. Roses are renowned for their anti-inflammatory and mild antiseptic properties and are used in perfumery, cuisine, and traditional medicine. Fun fact, roses have an aromatic architecture, hundreds of volatile organic compounds in trace proportions that create the complex scents that we know and recognize. In fact, perfumers describe rose scents as olfactory chords, like musical chords, with distinct what they call head, heart, and bass notes. So in short, roses are the secret chord that David played. Roses owe their stunning hues to what are called flavonoid pigments, especially pigments known as anthocyanins. If a scientist is in the house, please correct my pronunciation. These pigments can shift with pH, so acidic soils produce more vivid reds, while alkaline soil tilt hues towards more purplish or bluish hues. This is part of why rose colors vary by region and why roses can be such wonderful teachers in reminding us to connect more deeply and have a deeper conversation with the soil that nourishes us. White roses lack these pigments entirely and instead reflect the full spectrum of visible light. In most cultures, white roses symbolize purity, innocence, and spiritual love, which is why they're often depicted beside the Virgin Mary or in the hand of the fool in tarot as he takes a faithful, optimistic leap into the unknown. Tonight, the white rose felt fitting because it embodies the reverence and hope we strive for here at PMS, as well as the notion of new beginnings captured in Marla's upcoming work, Birth and Carnage, and the exalted spiritual love that Max personifies and has certainly gifted me. So let's hear it for the White Rose.
Yeah.
It's your middle name.
I know, it's like, and it's for me.
And we'll be giving these away after the event, so if this co-host calls to you, please come up and take one and bring her home. And now for our featured guests. Tonight we're joined by two extraordinary artists, Marla Phelan, a choreographer whose work fuses dance, theater, and technology to create visceral, emotional worlds, and Max Stossel, a poet and performer whose words have touched millions for their honesty, humor, and humanity. You can find in-depth bios for each of them on your chairs, but for now, please give it up for Marla and Max. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. I want to start with birth because both of you have an artistic, invested interest in birth. So Marla, I want to read some of your description for your upcoming piece, Birth and Carnage, that's happening December 19th through 21st. You say, birth and carnage moves between the macro and the micro, from the infinite churn of the cosmos to the trembling pulse of a single body. This is a dance work that fuses choreography, astrophysics, and video installation, and it's inspired by the astrophysical phenomenon of stellar birth as both visceral metaphor and choreographic framework. So I'm the plant lady, you're the star lady, and together we will be the Avengers. So can you talk about birth? Can you talk about this project? Can you talk about so much of what we're striving to do at PMS is tether together the individual and the macro, and it sounds like that's what you're preoccupied with. So tell us a little bit about this project.
Yes, thanks for having me. Yes, this piece, Birth and Carnage, is really born out of a collaboration with an astrophysicist. Her name is Dr. Blakesley Burkhart, and her area of research is in star formation, or as I like to call it, galactic birth. And the thing that has struck me the most about galactic birth is the amount of violence and turbulence it takes for anything to be born. And I feel like that's really been a coping mechanism for the amount of violence that we're currently experiencing, and also just life and death and all of these like big topics, and that are, as we were talking about this earlier, but that are so fundamentally human, but are things that we can't understand until the moment that we experience them ourselves. And birth.
And so what has it been like collaborating with this astrophysicist? You come from such different disciplines, and as you were talking about earlier, it's hard to represent them literally. So how is that being transposed into the idiom of contemporary dance?
Yeah. The collaboration started as a conversation. There was no end game. There was no, we just were hanging out. I'd go to her lectures, and she'd come into the studio with me, and we started finding this like these common words, the same jargon that like where we overlapped. And then I was looking at her, she creates these beautiful simulations of star formation, and they just look like fiery balls flying around. And so I took those and I started transposing them onto dancers. And then because dancers aren't inanimate rocks flying around in space, all of this beautiful meaning making starts to happen. And then I thought, okay, well, what if we replace the force of gravity with the force of love or attraction, and or hate and repulsion? And it just like deepened the work even more. So both you'll see like the topography of star formation, but then also like the human interaction and looking at like the cosmos as the macrocosm for the human experience.
Now when you look up at the night sky, do you look at it differently?
I would love to be able to see something when I look up at the night sky. Where was it? Like, are you up there? I do, yeah. Mostly because I think there's so much like blackness out there, and where light exists, there's this, I think that was like a Carl Sagan quote, but where light exists, there's this arduous battle happening for survival. And so when you look up at the night sky and you see a star, like, wow, you really fought to live, because you shouldn't have lived. And
oh, it's so beautiful because I again, there's an Emerson quote that I'm going to completely bastardize right now, but it's some version of, I do not wish to treat friendships daintily, but with the roughest courage. Like when they are real, they're not glass houses or waxwork, but they're the solidest things we know. And sometimes it's difficult in this or any other venue when I want to talk about love. It doesn't mean passivity. It means so much sacred rage. It means so much fight. It doesn't mean that we sit down and accept what's happening to us, but I think we do it from the frequency of regulation and of love. But the friction is so healthy and so erotic and so galvanizing that it's beautiful to think about stars coming into being because they were like tough old birds.
Yeah, and friction is literally it.
Yeah.
From my small understanding of astrophysics and star formation, but it is because all of these dust particles come together and then the friction happens and then they heat up.
Yeah.
That's why it exists.
Yeah. Oh, which is so beautiful in the sense that we all need each other and we need to have the friction and the wherewithal to be engaged in that friction in order to create.
And it's so stars are formed. I know what someone's going to be like, not quite. But so gravity starts to collapse in on itself, and it collapses and collapses and collapses and collapses, and it could continue to collapse and never become a star or become a black hole. But then turbulence like pushes up and out against gravity, and it stabilizes. And then you reach this thing called the threshold, and it passes through the threshold, and then it can become the star. But it's not without the turbulence and the collapse.
I can see how beautifully that must be mapped onto dancers' bodies too. Does the threshold exist in your piece?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is your sign to buy a ticket. If you two, I feel like I'm in a cult. I'm like, if you two would like to see the threshold, purchase a ticket. So there is some really interesting connective tissue between both of your work because you created a piece called "It's a Miracle." Raise your hand if you saw "It's a Miracle." If you did, I thought you did. And it's about birth and death and motherhood, similarly, and about psychedelics. Can you talk about how you think about birth in that piece and how you think about birth now after having done that piece?
Awesome. So into the star formation idea and really still there mentally. Yes, birth and death. It was born in a way out of one of my favorite stories, which is really equating birth and death to each other, which is a story between two babies in the womb having an argument about whether or not there's life after delivery.
Will you do it? Our whole life is just me being like, dance.
And so it's in a mother's womb were two babies, and one turns to the other and says, "Do you believe in life after delivery?" And of course, the other one quickly retorts, "There has to be something after delivery. Maybe we're here getting ready for what will be." What? Seriously? That's outrageously silly. There's no life after delivery. What kind of life could be after delivery? "I don't know," said the second, "but there'll be more light than here. Maybe we'll run and skip and dance and jump and play and laugh and breathe and love. Maybe we'll walk with our legs and eat with our mouths. Maybe we'll have other senses that we can't understand now." "Well, that's awfully impossible," the other one scoffed. "Oh, we'll walk with our legs, and with magic we'll stay up, and we'll eat with our mouths. Come on, that's dumb. The umbilical cord supplies nutrition, and you see this cord? It's way too short. There's no life out there, of course. But maybe it's just different than it is here," the other implored. "Maybe we won't need that physical cord anymore." "Nonsense," said the first. "And furthermore, if there were life after delivery, I'm sure that someone would have come back to report. Delivery is the end of life, and in the after delivery, there's nothing. It's darkness, it's silence, it's oblivion, infinite. You better know that now so you can deal with it." "Well, I don't know," the second baby uttered, "but certainly we'll meet Mother, and she'll take care of us." "Mother," replied the other. You actually believe in Mother? If Mother exists, where is she now?" "She's all around us," said the second, eyes big. "We are of her. It is in her that we live. Without her, this world would not and could not exist." "Well, I don't see her," the first insisted. Sure seems like she just doesn't exist. Sometimes, replied the second, when you're in silence and you really listen, you can perceive her presence. You can hear her loving voice calling down from above. You can perceive her presence. You can feel her loving voice calling down from above. And so that sort of is the birth of the show. And that story I love so much. I will pause for clapping. And yeah, that I think there's so many similarities of birth and death. And part of why I love that story so much is like my logical, skeptical brain can't poke any holes in it and loves to engage with it in that way of like, why not? Why couldn't death be birth into something more? And I love the play of, well, no, there's this reason and there's that reason, which all make perfect sense from the perspective of the womb with the amount of information that we know in the womb. But the big missing detail is just the limit of our perspective and how much more can be beyond. And yeah, for me, I don't know that there's a difference between how I see it before the show and after the show. But also like because for me, doing the show was already so much in that belief and the creation of it. But before knowing that story and after that story, I think that poem absolutely changed my perspective on death.
Yeah. And when we talk about what feels imperiled in our current socio-political moment, so much of it is about being born and being quiet enough to hear our surroundings. So in that closing line, it's if you get really quiet. And so much of what I'm always endeavoring to do as someone who's very impatient is to slow down and listen and get closer to the earth and try to discern everything that really is available to us, the crazy bananas miracle that exists. Think about this today. I was like, we live with the moon. Like the moon is just hanging out and we're here and we're not all walking around all the time in utter rapture. Like that's an abomination to me. That's blasphemy. So anyway, enough about that. I could wax poetic about the moon, but I think part of what we're so worried about is this kind of frenetic staccato pace of a technologically motivated existence. And so much of what you do, in addition to your poetry work, is you go into schools and talk to students, parents, and educators about the challenges of social media. So can you talk about what that work has been like and maybe how it thwarts or prevents or challenges the deep feelings that we're talking about with the luteal phase, the exalted states of being that we're striving for?
And yeah, my spiritual belief really is that like God, universe, spirit, whatever you want to call it, totally cool with me, is always communicating with us and always guiding us and always talking to us. And we're just not really able to listen to it or see it. And I love the end of that poem because it's if you're in silence and you really listen, you can find the clues, you can hear the voice, you can hear Mother calling down from above. And I think one of the reasons that I am so passionate about people and the next generation not being totally fucked up by social media and phones and all of the ways that it pulls us out of reality is how hard it makes listening to those little moments, those in-betweens, how easy it is to just get pulled into the low-hanging fruit. I don't know who to talk to in this room. Oh, okay, I'm right here. This is like uncomfortable, this is hard, I don't know how to deal with this, I'm just gonna zone out and do this right here. It's just never been easier to run away from ourselves and run away from meaning and run away from those like divinely choreographed in-between moments. And yeah, like I'm very saddened by how a lot of these kids are living their lives in childhood. And the work I do is I go into schools and I'm the guy at assembly who comes in and tries to help them think for themselves and be like, let's laugh for a second at all the ridiculous things that we're doing on our devices. Do we actually want that? Like, is this how you actually want your relationships to be? And I've gotten pretty good at finding ways of like getting them to actually see it and start to make some changes or think about things differently. And so, yeah, I'm in about 50 or 60 schools a year trying to help parents, students, educators navigate this weird social media world.
Yeah. If you could design a social media platform or alter the ones we have to engender more aliveness, what would you do?
So yeah, when a lot of people think about what could a different future of social media look like, your first thought is like, well, what's in the feed? Like what's in, but a feed content thrown at our faces is not a human need. Like that's not what it would include at all. It would look very different. I would love a social media network where all the data and all the things it was collecting on us were being used to help illuminate new experiences that we later rate as, I'm so glad that happened, and it wouldn't have happened were it not for this platform. Connect us to people that we later say, I'm glad this person is now in my life. Like using all of its data to push us towards things like that, and not just mindless 1 to 5 stars of Candy Crush, super addictive, 5 stars. Like 5 stars for what? Like, what is the human intention behind going into this experience at this moment? I'm feeling lonely right now. What were the 5-star things for helping me in that moment of loneliness? A lot of times that won't involve a screen at all. Like a lot of times that is completely, a lot of times it'll be call this friend. It'll be go outside, paint people's fingernails on the street. Like I would love for technology to be collecting all sorts of weird and wonderful different options for people struggling with these human problems. And so I would pay for a social network that was using its data to do all of that. I would not at all pay for any of the social networks as they exist now. So I think there actually could be a market for something like that, because it could be the greatest personal assistant to the things that matter most to us, to our humanity, to our values that has ever existed. But that's just not even remotely close to how it's designed right now. And right now it feels like it pulls us further away from the soul and meaning as rather than closer to it. Also, where should I look?
I tend to get so ensconced in what the person is saying that I forget, and then I look up and I'm like, oh, I love all of you too. Look wherever you please.
Okay.
And I do think what Marla and I luckily got to work together at Sleep No More and Life and Trust for many years, I mean, over a decade. And I think one of the things that is so bewitching about that theatrical medium is that you are forcibly taken away from your phone, put deeply into your body, and given a chance to have these very intimate human encounters that include eye contact, that include a sense of kinship and shared humanity. And I think, I mean, we have many immersive theater fans in the audience, so I would love to hear your perspectives too, but I think those are the elements that we're homesick for, and it feels difficult to cast off our phone of our own free will, but then once we do it, we feel so deeply in the present moment. So I would love to hear about how that time in your life, and such a formative time, has shaped how you perform and how you think about your life as a human being.
Wow. Also, is this what pillow talk is like?
Yes, but more poems.
So inspired.
Max's parents are here. So this is fun for all of us.
Yeah, I think immersive theater has helped me experience performance and the world in 360 degrees. You know, when you're on a stage in a traditional proscenium theater, it's out in this one direction, and there's a bounce back. But with immersive work, it's like all around you, and it's actually a lot like dance, where there's people, you know, who are hugging on all sides of you, and it's helped me like just have that awareness when I'm out in the world as well, that there's people all around me and there's theater happening in 360 constantly.
Yeah. And you had a famed quotation that I think we did a year of Sleep No More salons, and maybe not one went by where people weren't quoting you when you said that after playing a witch for so long, you would walk through the subway and just expect people to move for you. And what that experience was like. So can you talk about, when we're talking about choreography, when we're talking about pedestrian movement, like how did that experience seep into your body, into your psyche?
Well, that was me being an asshole 24-year-old.
We love her.
We love her. She was awesome.
Yeah.
But yes, no, I definitely, it messes with your ego for sure, because you have people like following you wherever you go. And I remember one of the first experiences, like my first show, I was like walking around and I like looked and I was like, oh, look at all these people following me. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I made eye contact and I was like, oh, they're really just engaged. And I would like walk down High Street again and then be like, wow, oh, look at them again. And I was like enthralled by that. And that's, you know, good. And then you're an asshole and expect people to do that on the subway too.
I'm really happy happy that you had such a positive first experience, because I, in theory, loved Sleep No More, was so excited during the rehearsals. And then the first show that I actually went in, I was the sixth floor. And so I stood at the top of the stairs and I saw all these white masks staring up at me, and I was like, this resembles a nightmare. Why did I think that this would be fun to do? And very quickly it became fun, and I was like, this is terrifying. And so I wish I had been as excited as you had been in those first moments.
It's just powerful, you know, and you realize that you have this responsibility in your hands that, you know, you can either do good with or you can be an asshole with.
Yeah.
Can I make one comment on that too?
Yeah.
It is really interesting. One of the exercises I have the kids do sometimes if something feels confusing online is like, if what was happening digitally was a real space, what would it be? And you talk about people literally following you, or it's like, if you think about what is a follower, like if you sort of had the actual experience of masked, you don't exactly know who they are, but you know they're listening. Like sometimes thousands of people following you around, and how differently we would treat that kind of attention if you experience it in theater versus behind the weird mask of the phone.
Yes. If we can extend that allegory or metaphor a little further, what would the equivalent of one-on-ones be? Because there is this moment of deep connection. Is it a DM? Is it like some?
It so doesn't exist in the virtual. I mean, I guess like for some of the kids, it's like, oh my God, a celebrity actually acknowledged me. They hit like on my comment, but like, like that's not the one-on-one. Like that's not the magic that happens as like you're pulled out of the crowd. And I guess it is mimicking that feeling, but something. And no to that is not that one-on-one, and one-on-one is not one-to-one.
Yeah. So now let's get a little bit into the meat of this, which is the very casual question: what is the meaning of life, or where do you find meaning? When you think about this question, what arises for you?
There are a couple of different levels of it for me. One, and I was thinking, and I'm far more nervous to be on stage than I normally am. I spend most of my life on stage, and this is Ilana's event. I want to make sure I'm doing a good job. But on one level, one of the things that I think I find the most meaning in is when it feels like, when I'm aware that the universe called this meeting. Like when I am in touch with every choice I've ever made, everything I've ever thought, everything I've ever done has led me right here, right now. It has also led you right here, right now. Everything, every single thing that has ever happened has led you and me right here, right now. And when I can feel in touch with the bigness and serendipity of that, I find meaning in those moments. And so, like, I don't particularly love the process of writing. I love the process of being inside a poem when a poem is happening, because it feels like this grand connection to the allness of it. And I feel my significant personal meaning. Oh, I right now have an opportunity to capture this beauty, and I can deliver it. And I find the meaning in that. And I can feel that with friends sometimes, of like, oh, they're here, they're going through something. If I'm just so present, maybe I can provide some insight, some support, some just presence that will mean so much to this person. I can bring my meanness to the moment and meet everything that's here. And so, yeah, when I feel in that, I think I find the most meaning. And never in my life have I ever felt more of my ability to give my meanness and be who I am than my love for you. So in many ways, my love for you absolutely feels like the most meaningful thing in my life and in all of life. And I'm not proud of this, but a part of me has a hunch that the entirety of existence, not just me and you, all of that is really just because of this love and for us and me and you right here. There is a part of me that like believes it's too much. There's so much love here. It can't even possibly be just contained here. But the most meaningful thing in my life, far and away, has been the North Star of loving you beyond all rhyme and reason as a fool with outstretched arms. And I love you to the moon and back again. And I love you so much more than the moon. Your turn.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'm like, how much do you love me? I'm waiting. Well, I want to thank you. What could one possibly say to that? But also, this, when you talk about serendipity and sort of the poignant inevitability of this encounter with the present moment, is that elastic enough to encompass like chance and randomness and divine predetermination? Like, do you think for people that believe, I believe in how beautiful randomness is, and that all the places in the world, again, there's a Carl Sagan quote about this, that like, it's not that everything was destined, it's that we randomly found each other in the cosmos, and how beautiful is that? Do you believe that that weightiness can exist for fate and randomness in equal measure?
Yeah, when words fall short by design.
Yeah.
And I think to me, randomness and chance are a part of it. Like moving in and out of fate and randomness and chance. If it was all scripted, that's less beautiful than randomness interspersed into the fateful move. And only sort of on psychedelics do I feel like I've been able to see through the veil of how much dimensionality there is in like the layer upon layer of fate and choice and beauty. But yes, I think there's absolutely room for randomness and choice inside of that. And I think it's sprinkled in by the most loving chef that could ever be, as just like, oh, if this could be even more wonderful for you all, then yeah, sure. Oh, if randomness is more beautiful than fate right now, for perfect. Have some. Have as much as you'd like. That's sort of how I see it.
Yeah. And when you are present, it sounds like, based on your description, that you feel both, in a very star intergalactic way, both simultaneously reduced and augmented by the splendor of the world. Like, you're more aware of your maxness, and you feel so small when we're talking about scope and scale. Does that feel accurate, that when you're present, you're both out of yourself and more in yourself than you ever usually are?
You're so aware of my part in the whole, that I am but a part of the whole, but in each part's incredible importance, where a lot of people get lost in the psychedelia with the oh my God, the I Godness. I am God because you are God, and you are God, and you're like, it's not just Max, but the being so spectacularly part of the whole and an essential part of the whole, where I can bring exactly what I've been given with exactly my experience right now to this moment, and it's exactly what is needed, because it wouldn't be here if it wasn't. And by chance, randomness, fate, whatever it might be.
Yeah. And would you say that that's what you feel we're here to do, is inhabit a poem, whatever a poem may be, an encounter with a friend, a sense of rapture, a sense of infinite possibility? Does that feel right? That
feels like what I'm here to do. Yeah. And I like it when I feel most supportive, when I can help people be whatever it is they feel most deeply here to do. And I have a hunch that that's true for a lot of people, but if it deeply isn't true for someone else, then I don't want to force my thing on them.
Yeah. Oh, and for you, Marla, talking about, you've spent all this time in the cosmos contemplating, life from an aerial perspective for the past, it sounds like 3 years, when the genesis of this piece came up. So for you, what does this feel about? Where do you find beauty? Where do you find meaning?
Yeah, I think it's similar. In the present, I feel like when I can be of service to others, to myself, that's when I feel the most me, the most free to make mistakes, and to create, and to be free of like the ego of it all. And when you're in like a really dark place, to be able to be of service to other people, or to the craft, or to what you're creating, takes you out of the equation, and or puts you into the bigger equation. And I find that a lot of meaning in that.
Yeah. I know when we can now say the spoiler alert. I don't know if our NDAs have expired. But we were working on an immersive podcast, and I had interviewed you. And one of the things that we talked about that I found so inspiring was this idea of framing. You were talking about, when we only frame life in a particular way, it becomes like a piece of art. And all that it requires for life to feel exalted in that way is a consciousness that says, I'm setting some curtains around this sliver of existence in order to anointed and enthroned it. So can you talk about that? What it's like for you?
Yeah, I think that like every moment is beautiful and is a miracle and is theater and should be appreciated and loved. And you know, you can walk down the street and there's an interaction that's happening that is really special and random, but also could be scripted. And it's just perspective. Seeing like I'm really inspired by the rituals that we keep as people. And they're not that many of them anymore, but going to the theater is one of them. Funerals and weddings are other ones. And getting to give the eulogy at my grandmother's funeral like was the greatest piece of art I've ever experienced or made.
What about that? What struck you so deeply?
That it was like respecting the ritual, the thing that like we were all coming together and it felt like a performance and I was there to like hold everyone in the space. And it was the same responsibility I feel when I'm performing, that I'm holding the space for everyone to reflect or to have an experience.
Yeah, I love thinking about that in the context of a menstrual cycle. I think there is something so beautiful for femmes that I wish for all beings of any gender expression, which is the permission to just be always protean and always changing every month and be with the vicissitudes of your own being. Like, yes, I'm going to be wild and untamed, and now I'm going to feel great and glowing. And I like what you're saying in terms of I am holding the container for things to grow and change. And when we're talking about thresholds or portals or liminal space, maybe that is what art is about, is creating a frame, creating that steady rigging or that scaffolding for someone else to flail about or transform or have their grief or be like, it's sort of what you're talking about. Like you want to be present enough to watch someone become whatever it is they need to become, which I think is really powerful. So when we're talking about art, there's one other question that I love to ask both of you, which is, what is one piece of art that is really meaningful to you? If that may be your answer, but yeah, one that stuck with you.
Yeah, being engaged to you, I get to answer this question a bunch, and I try to change it every time because that keeps it fun and new for me. And one I haven't said yet, which is something we saw recently, but we went to see John Proctor's The Villain. And that was the best piece of theater I have seen in a very long time. And yeah, there was like one moment towards the end where I need to give context. No, I can't give context. There's just a moment towards the end where like so much of the art that I do and I create is because it feels in this deep, intangible way like so important. Like there's something that's so important that needs to be given or said. And I was sitting in that room and just feeling like this touches that place, like frankly better than my show does, better than like just this, whatever this is. Like I need to give myself to this energy, to this piece. Like it's just touching that sacred place in a moment that the world needs it so much. And it says it so well, and it treads like a tiptoe line so beautifully that's so hard to walk and stay playful and powerful and beautiful. And I was just like so grateful that this piece of art existed in the world. And yeah, it's unfortunately not running anymore, but it's too good to not come back. And I think it's going to
be a movie.
Yeah, which I hope it comes back in theater form. Yeah. But yeah, could not recommend highly enough that show. It really was just such a special work of art. John Proctor is The Villain.
And I think deeply luteal in its essence, and particularly that ending sequence, because what does it mean to be completely feral, to be combative, to be crazy, to be messy, to be chaotic, but not violent? And I think I've talked about this at a previous PMS session, that I think it embodies exactly the kind of confrontation or opposition that I would want to see. You make art, and art can have friction, art can have turbulence, art can be a provocation or a laying down of the gauntlet, but it did so, I think, in such a healthy, and if we can be reductive, like feminine way.
Yeah,
Marla.
Yeah, I'd say Andrew Schneider's Now Is Where We Are, I think is the title. It's kind of a hard title. No? Oh, it's a theatrical experience, environmental experience, and you walk into like complete darkness, like really, really, really dark. Like you can't see, yeah, like very, like you can't see anything. Your eyes are completely open, but you can't see your hand in front of you. And you're by yourself or with a group of people, but like you're ushered in one at a time. And slowly, I mean, I don't want to give all of it away, but slowly light starts to reveal itself, and you're in a room full of like, I don't know, it's like 6,000 tiny little light bulbs floating around. And it's narrated by Andrew, but also by past people who have gone through the experience, their recordings of their experience. And so you're guided by the past. And it reminded me that, you know, when we look up at the night sky and we're seeing a star, that it's long gone. It's been dead for so long. And when we like wish upon a star, like we're really wishing upon the dead, and those are our ancestors guiding us. And it was the most profound and beautiful piece of art I'd ever experienced.
Wow. And did you get an opportunity to record for subsequent?
I sure did. And that is not my personality. Like I would be like, I don't want to participate. Like, don't pick me kind of person when I'm in immersive experiences. I'm too shy. But that I was so moved that I was like immediately like, put me in the booth, like record.
Oh, Tyler gifted me one of the most incredible gifts I've ever had, which is to experience the Telelibrary. It was incredible. I'm going to maybe get this wrong, but similarly, I love art that is iterative and cumulative like that. And it's, I don't know how long other people was fooled. I was fooled for a very long time, but it's where you think.
Really long time.
Yeah. And Max was next to me being like, you know, this is a person, right? And I was like, no way. So it is an actor, but at first you think it's an AI automatic responses, which says so much about our current system that would be my first presumption. But it becomes a pick-a-path story where you can choose to press certain buttons and hear certain selections, and you get to start hearing other people's reflections on what this experience is like. And again, not even my luteal phase, but I cannot make it through PMS without crying, apparently. But there is something so beautiful about feeling that daisy chain of interpersonal connection through the prism of art. And it is why I love asking this question, an exhausting amount.
That's great.
Is because I love seeing where art resides in you. And I think this is exactly, you know, where it lives in us and how we can approach it, I think is one of the most incredible things we could do for the human race. Like, go see art, go make art, go ask people what art means to them, because I think we are all creators. If you believe in a creator, we are the creations, we are the art, we are the pieces of art. So I think the best way to honor that is to keep making it. I do want to make sure we have time for questions for these two incredible people. Yes, Kat.
What do each of you see as connections between births of multiple kinds? Meaning like our stellar births, our human births, our artistic births. I'm just struck by this idea that we are birthers and we are born. Like that's our human experience. We all have that journey. I wonder what that means for each of you as artists and as humans.
I think what I'm most sort of struck by in the question is that, sort of like you were describing with stars and the amount of pain and like, I don't personally know, but like in terms of actual human birth, but from what I've heard, this mom, it's incredible amounts of just like absolutely unfathomable amounts of like pain and agony and new experience that are in the bloody violence that is in the birthing process. And I think all of them have their own version of that violence, that the creation of something can be a really violent act. And it's interesting to tie in with love as Ilana is speaking to it, where it's like, yeah, like birth is a loving action. It's like, and there's tremendous amounts of pain and violence inside of that loving action. And yeah, staying attuned to like it's interesting in, yes, or I don't know, Mom, let me know if I'm wrong on this, but but there's so much pushing, and also though, like, this is happening through you, like this process is happening. You are both doing it and not doing it. Like that is existent in all of those categories of birthing, where you are both doing it and it's just sort of happening, and you're the vessel through which it happens. And I think that is in common with all of those.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfectly said. Also, your question is the answer. So, but I think that, yeah, the creative process is challenging. I think any kind of process is challenging, or when you are in the turbulence of change and of becoming, it's a wild ride. And I think if we know that there is something on the other side of the threshold, that's, you just keep going. And so you birth and you create, and I think that that's what we're meant to be doing, is creating.
I love this question, and I have a sort of depressing valence on it. So recently in a therapy session, I was thinking about how this previous experience I had in Peru for 2 weeks that I thought was really like glorious and expansive. In hindsight, I realized that I spent so much of it in a state of fear, and by being in a state of fear and literal fight or flight about like tarantulas that were over my little net and drugs and being out of if I need to get airlifted out, what would happen? And I had such deep grief about this idea of being in an experience that could have been so expansive, and indeed was in certain respects, but a lot of times I was just so dysregulated. And there's something about birth and death that I think our latent fear of pain or ending or ending to become something else drives so much of what is I find challenging about our world. And so for me, women in particular are birthing, they are carriers of life. They carry this enormous friction and violence and love and pain and creation in them. And so the fact that it feels like women are subjugated and oppressed really because they are feared for wielding this capacity to bring life makes me really sad. And similarly, the lack of our ability to confront our own mortality drives, I think, so much of what we're dealing with AI. Just as Max said, like, I would love an AI that we put plants next to it and saw what came out. We have this incredible consciousness, and I think if it allows us to stop prioritizing the human over the non-human, I can really get excited about something that kind of equalizes the playing field of consciousness. But I think so much of what's happening in our race with technology and our race for power and status is a fear of death. And so if both birth and death can be approached with curiosity and with an openness and a sense of surrender, not that I know how to do this, but like, God, I hope I can, because pain is a very present tense experience and transformation is a very present tense experience. So may we all birth something fucking crazy, and we're all gonna die. We're already dying right now. It's so cool. It really is. There's a surprise ending for all of us. You're a king, you're a peasant, you go the same way, and it's a magic trick and it's a surprise. And like, may we really spend time in reverence of death, which is such an important part of life. Other questions? Yes, Sid.
So I'm glad you mentioned death because I was planning on it.
Girl, on the same page.
So when we talk like, yin and yang, there's two ends of it. Do you feel like birth and death are related concepts that are the opposite of each other, or do you feel like actually birth exists on its own? Like when you think about birth, the concept, whether it's stars, whether it's art, whether it's creation of life, do you feel like that exists outside of death, or do you feel like that's kind of like an equal balance with death? And like, how do you view those two things? Because I feel like you don't have one without
Yeah, no, I see them as the same. I think that like it's just a cycle where you are on the cycle, but it's all becoming. So whether you're the baby in the womb going, oh, I've been in this comfy home for 9 months, my whole life, and then suddenly my home is becoming so inhospitable and all of these contractions are happening and you feel like you must be dying, but then you're born. Like I it's maybe it's my coping mechanism and my way of not having as much fear around death is to think, oh, okay, well, we're just becoming the next thing. And I think that we have many deaths in our lives and we're constantly becoming new versions of ourselves. And so we are constantly being reborn. So I think more about like rebirth than birth or death.
I hadn't really thought about it. It got me thinking on, like, okay, what does art die? Like when you birth an art project, does that die? And I don't feel particularly aware of where death is on the, like, I get where we stop thinking about it or focusing on it, or maybe the Coco way of like when the last person has forgotten it, that maybe it's gone in that regard. But yeah, it makes me think, or wonder, is death a very sort of life oriented and being oriented concept? But then again, what is it in us that actually dies as well, and what is it that ends? I don't know. It made me think. Yeah.
I love what you're saying about. I love thinking of us as a verb, like you're Marlaying, you're maxing, and we're constantly becoming, and so it feels like birth and death, yes, happen, but I believe in the compost of matter constantly recycling itself in perpetual waves, and so yes, we can kind of create these arbitrary markers, which in a certain plane do exist, and there's also part of me that's like, does it all just keep going? And that could be a source of great solace and a source of great terror to be like, this never ends. Maybe it doesn't. I'm not quite sure. So that's my answer. We have time for perhaps one more question. Yes. Or maybe two.
What's the role of feedback and how you think about when you see feedback, especially in the artistic expression? Probably pretty early on, embryonic.
Yeah.
Feedback can kill, right? But feedback also makes things better. So I'm curious for you as a dancer and for you as a master of words, right? How do you balance feedback as a gift, but also not have it
I love feedback at the right time. I think that when you're asking for it, it's useful. I think that when you're in the creative process, I find it really useful. I find it less useful once you're presenting the work. Then it feels unkind. But I think it makes you grow either way, and I try not to let it affect me personally. Like, it's about the work and it's not about me, Marla. It's about whatever the thing that I birthed out. And it is imperfect, and I'm okay with it being messy. Like, I've spent too much of my life trying to be a perfectionist, and especially as a dancer, like, you have to like craft every little muscle and make everything look effortless, that I'm like, at this point, at this age, I don't care anymore. And so the feedback is like, it's great, and I can look at it as like a mirror reflecting love back at me, that this person is giving me feedback to help me grow and to help the work grow, even if it might like sting a little bit. And if it stings, then I know that I really love what I've made, or that I like have love. Yeah.
Yeah, after your question, I was trying to make the sound with the mics because that's
Yeah.
how it feels to me. Feedback is the it's like feels like that in my body. And then I guess there's two kinds. There's the feedback of how something has resonated with somebody, and like I like seeing that from whoever I'm delivering art to. But yeah, often, I mean, I'm learning how to take feedback in more in the process. Ilana is very, very good at giving it in like the most loving way, and I can take it in from her in a way that feels good. Like around art, I guess in all ways, Ilana's actually very good at giving feedback. But I often feel, especially when something feels inspired, like it came from being in exactly the right place at the right time, of it coming through me. And here I have a feeling, both with myself and others, of who the fuck am I to edit what just came out? Like, how dare I, and like, how dare you try to change this sacred thing? And I think, right, I wonder if there might be a more evolved version of, yes, it came through that way, and then also the person giving the feedback is divinely placed in that moment too. But I get very sensitive about, like, where is that coming from? Are you coming from as beautiful of a place as where this came from? Because if you're not, I don't give a fuck about what you're saying to me. And I rarely feel like people are, and I'm very protective and very sensitive, and I don't like it. Yeah.
This is so beautiful. So this is pillow talk for real, that Max and I are always having this conversation because he wants to adhere to the purity of art coming through you in such a beautiful, undiluted way. And for me, as like an academic, I love the editing process. I'm like, I want to get in the thicket. I want to get in the hedgerows, and just I find it so creative in those moments when I am despairing and throw in the towel, and then there's this moment of another piece of insight. I get knocked down. Like year 4 of the dissertation. And at one point we were having an argument, and Max, as an apology, wrote me a poem that the first line said, "I am learning to edit." And I thought that was so beautiful. And I think about it all the time.
No.
My patron saint, one of my patron saints, Brene Brown, has this line where she says, "Write from the scar and not the wound." And I found that really edifying for thinking about when you're ready to receive feedback, because I think you make such a good point about when it's given is so decisive. When it's too late, it's like after you trip and someone's like, "Oh, careful." And you're like, "Yeah, okay, that's not helpful." And if it's too soon, I have a tendency to want to write about deeply personal topics. And I sometimes have to resist by going, have I worked on myself enough to be open, to actually be generous enough to let people to respond to this piece in whichever way they want? And if it's too raw for me, I'm not giving them the opportunity to do that. I did have to, in my PhD program, learn how to give feedback in a way that I wish everyone learned how to do. So I'm going to tell you, dramatize your experience as the reader, as the audience, as whatever way you're receiving the piece of work. So, for example, when I would be editing people's papers, it would be, "Oh, I found my interest flagging at this point for these reasons," or, "Oh, you kind of lost me," or, "Here, I found myself getting really excited and having this question," as opposed to, "This is bad, this is good," because then you're owning your own personal experience, and you're just providing them with a sense of, here are the contours of a reader's journey. It doesn't mean that anything you did was bad or good or putting a value judgment on it. My mother-in-law to be is a therapist, so I bet she would have much better things to say about how to give feedback correctly. But those things very much come to mind for me. And I would also say one of the best and most moving experiences of my life is when I got a really brutal piece of feedback on a piece that I wrote. And a dear friend of mine, it was about a political conflict. And she said, "I want you to look at both your writing and how your writing is revealing your bias towards one side of these two groups of people." And I had a moment that I was like, if I'm receiving this piece of feedback, I am living a good life. Like, if I have a friend that is smart enough and kind enough and courageous to do this with me, I'm doing something right. And so I would say when feedback is given well, and when two people have the ability to have trust to see whatever arises between them, feedback is fucking glorious. Yes, our last question.
Actually, good follow-up question. So I'm really curious about the creative process, I guess, editing, choosing to that's more the creative process. But I'm just curious more about the creative process. Like, how do you have like an end goal in mind? the best way to present this, or is it like I'm just writing down words and whatever I see, follow up, or is it kind of what's the starting point? Like, is it the point and then the art follows create the point, or is it like the art happens and then happens? But also, I mean, like, I'm not really familiar with the production process. I'm curious. Like, like, how did you decide how many people are on stage, and like, how long are they on stage, and like, how are they moving? Like, do you like draw everybody before you go on stage? Like, I don't know how it looks. So
I think the creative process always looks different. Sometimes it's a deeply personal subject, and sometimes it's a piece of clothing. And in this one, it was a conversation. So it started with the conversation that I was having with this computational astrophysicist. And I knew that it was like big, epic subject matter. And so it needed a lot of people. My dream is that it would be 30 dancers, but I can only afford 8, myself being one of them. And I really, for this one, looked at her Blakesley's simulations and mapped out, and I said, okay, everyone, we're going to each follow a dot. And we followed a dot and we made some topography. And then once we like learned what the rules, what we kind of assume the rules of gravity are by looking at these simulations, we then invented our own rules and we broke all the rules. And then how do you personify something so abstract? So then like we're people, and when we come this close to each other, how are we interacting and what are we feeling? And so it all sort of feels random, but like we all know that the North Star is being human, I think, and love. I think love is for me like always the fundamental of every creative process, and having fun and being curious, I think, is also huge. Like if you just follow your joy, it all works out. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very much, the art that is most interesting to me is the art that starts with just inspiration is happening and where does it want to go. And then an exercise that is actually very hard to do in the world that we live in and stick to, but I think is worthwhile, is really staying true and asking, like, where does it want to go? Like, not where do you want to take it, but where does it want to go? And being curious about what that process looks like. And then, like that, it's the reason that I think that is hard to do in the world is that that's not often like a clear, concrete structure of it wants to be in this format, which is how one presents something or makes money. It might be like it wants to, like, yeah, I want to like put on a little something and deliver this to my friend. Like that's what this art wants, and then it feels complete in that. But I'm a big fan of that process of like asking it once the piece starts coming through, really being curious about what it is and what it wants, and following that. And other places I found that challenging is that like it doesn't seem particularly linearly tied to time. Like I might get an answer of where something wants to be far later than I want the answer to where that's going to be, and involves a lot of sitting and being like, I'm an artist, I'm supposed to have more things to do and stuff to say, and it's not telling me yet, and I just have to be in my humanness around that, and I don't like that, and I'm not good at that. But really asking it and being curious about it is a process I think is worthwhile.
Yeah, I think coming from pretty strict disciplines like growing up with ballet or growing up in writing, I was more product oriented in a way that I think harmed the nature and the essence of the work. And now I think I'm more intrinsically interested in igniting the flint of creativity so that it pervades all aspects of my life. Because I do now deeply believe that creativity is interdisciplinary and associative. And I think that there's like a beautiful spiritual imperative beneath that, which is everything has meaning, everything is destined, and everything can make sense. It's one of the things I say ad nauseum, that like a story is so beautiful because it's elastic enough to accommodate whoever and whatever it needs to. It's just going to keep growing fatter and richer from the never ending train of voices that it needs to hear and needs to accommodate. And so for me, knowing that nothing in my life is a mistake, maybe that's just cognitive dissonance, but saying everything here has meaning, everything here has purpose, and so how can I bind myself more closely between everything I've ever experienced, done, felt, or seen? And so some of the ways that I try to do this, and I suggest that other people do this, it's just like build your nest beyond the most extreme diet of art that you possibly can. And for me, that's just ravenously reading, that's going to as much art as I can, that's dancing in the morning, that's being in a wild, natural place. And then I think you get more in touch with naturally what you love, the kind of art you love, the kind of art that compels you or propels you further away. And I think that gets inherently interesting. I also think that in academia, there's something called close reading, which I think is a very cute term to describe what it means, not when you want to impose theory on a text, but you want to get really close to the text and snugly and like interpret very particular words. And there's something about being more connected to art on a daily basis that makes you close read the universe, I think, in the way that you're talking about. If you become a close reader of life, now that I write poems, I see a poem in the wild, and it's not like I'm writing it. I'm just like, oh God, I have a note on my phone that's called Poems People Told Me. And it's just like when someone says something really beautiful. Max said something the other day where he said, the truth is always interesting. And I was like, that's a poem. And I wouldn't know that if I didn't have that frame of reference on. And similarly, when something challenging happens to me now that I write short form essays, I'm sort of like, oh, these three seemingly disparate things actually have some connective DNA, and I'm going to be able to knit that together for myself psychologically when I make the art. So I do think creativity is the antidote to all of our malaise. And with that being said, I would invite anyone who wants to just close their eyes briefly for a moment and take in how special it is to be together beneath the stars that we cannot see, but that we know are there, combusting and dying and birthing all at once. That we are not on our phones, that we are here, present, sharing breath, sharing space. And taking one deep inhale together and exhaling out. And on the inhale, breathing in all of the love and care that we have for you, our fellow beings. And as you breathe out, sending out love and peace and care to every being on earth. May all beings, human, non-human, be safe, known, free, and loved. Please give it up for the rose, for Marla, for Max,
For Ilana.
Marla's middle name is Rose. You cannot know. And Mona brought a rose tonight, seemingly did not know that. There it is. So please come up and take your rose. Please come up and sign a book if you would like to. Our next PMS session, again, in 2 weeks, when I really will be feral, I promise you. I miss this with Bea Voce. She studies under Esther Perel. She studies under Rick Doblin, and she talks specifically about relationships and pairs. So when we're talking about feedback and we're talking about that, she is the queen of all queens.